Canberra has been the centre of attention this week, with polling showing overwhelming support in the ACT for The Voice. Even today, in the heart of Canberra at the National Press Club, we saw Minister for Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney, reposition the Yes campaign by outlining 4 essential pillars for what The Voice will focus on. But what really caught my attention was the final portion of the Q&A segment of her oration today, when she pivoted to cost of living, but she specifically highlighted the government's focus on childcare.
The number one priority of this government is precisely what you've outlined. It's the cost of living, which was one of the reasons that we're so focused on bringing down the cost of childcare.
And interestingly, it's not just childcare that's dominating the headlines today and tomorrow, and you know what, probably for the foreseeable future. It's also fertility rates in Australia and an impending baby drought, as reported in the Sydney Morning Herald. It's really interesting. This headline reads, Australia's baby drought underscores challenges facing younger workers. Matt Wade, who is a senior economics reporter for the Sydney Morning Herald, writes, Australia's fertility rate is near historic lows, and there are signs it will fall further. The baby drought is most noticeable in our biggest cities. Specifically, in the Melbourne City statistical region, the fertility rate has slumped to 0.66 in 2021, a fraction of the 2.1, and I hate this phrase, but it is scientific, replacement level rate needed for a stable population, not including migration. Bronwyn, this is a really fascinating story, and I love the fact that it's now being given the gravitas that it deserves as a productivity and an economic issue. But I don't know why, but I have the great Peter Costello ringing in my ears saying, what was his catch cry of one for mum and one for dad, one for the nation. But yes. Again, yeah, it seems to be the fact that it's not just an issue affecting younger people, obviously people in childbearing ages, but childcare is probably one of the biggest issues that we're seeing that could be an impediment to increasing the population.
This is right, but there's nothing new about it, Jenna, because back when I did my big report into balancing work and family back in 2008, I think it was, this was then top of the list. But what Canberra needs to recognise in particular with its large public service component is, if you are a worker in the public service and you put your child into a government-provided childcare centre, then you can salary sacrifice your childcare expenses, and that applies to the ABC as well. But if you're just an ordinary working person, you can't, and you're stuck with institutionalised childcare, which is why we recommended that there be tax deductibility for childcare to give parents choice, so they can choose to have care in their own home, in-home care, and introduce choice and competition away from the institutions where now we see the government wants to use it as a method of indoctrinating kids as young as 2. So when you look at the whole area, there is desperate need for huge reform, because every time the government puts in a subsidy, up goes the cost of childcare. And for Linda Burney to bring that issue up in her otherwise rather poor speech, I thought it was today, it had about as much validity of expecting the government to honour its promise of bringing down electricity prices by $275. It's become a mantra, but it's not real.
Yeah, indeed. Lisa, I just wanted to come quickly to you, because you were probably only recently, having to deal with childcare, being a working mum and a working family yourself. But it's really interesting. Anecdotally, I was speaking to my brother today, and we were speaking about, Linda Burney's speech. And he said, yeah, look, I'm really not focusing on The Voice. Great, it needs to get done. Like, do what you need to do. But whatever they should do, just do something about childcare. He has 2 little ones under the age of 3. So him and his partner just rely on it so heavily to remain in the workforce. But it is going to be one of those issues. But I did find it quite jarring that the Indigenous Affairs Minister did, shoehorn it into that answer about The Voice today.
Yeah, and I think most Australians who are dealing with cost of living pressures right now don't want to hear the government focusing so much on the voice. They do want to see some sort of solution when it does come to cost of living. And as Bronwyn said, you know, you see the subsidies go up. Well, this report on the front page of the Canberra Times says that there's a 20% increase around the country on that daily rate that's been put on top. And in ACT, it's 40%. So there are real out-of-pocket expenses there for families. And that is if you can get a spot for your child in childcare. Now, yeah, I'm lucky my last is now going through high school, so I'm dealing with school fees. But I remember having that discussion, and it was a big discussion at the mothers group stage where putting your child's name down even before they were born just to try to secure a place in childcare, and never mind afford it now. So I think the estimate is it's what, 1/5 of your income is what you will put out in spend on childcare now. And the latest figures are 40% or 44% of your income, if you have a mortgage, is now going to your mortgage.
Yes.
The numbers very quickly don't add up. And yet you've got the government so focused on the voice.